All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to talk about something powerful and, yeah, often pretty uncomfortable. It's a psychological dynamic that you see everywhere, from the schoolyard all the way up to the world stage. We're talking about scapegoating. So, the source material we're looking at kicks things off with this incredibly powerful analogy. I mean, you can just picture it, can't you? That feeling in the pit of your stomach, the pressure, the fear, that desperate need to just blend in with the powerful group so you don't become the next target. That one idea? That's the key to unlocking everything else we're about to cover. Because really, that's what it all boils down to, right? This core fear, this deep-seated anxiety of being the one who's singled out, isolated, and attacked, that is the engine driving this entire behavior. It's almost a primal instinct, to protect yourself, even if that means you have to turn on someone else or just go along with something you know deep down isn't right. Now, this instinct to side with the bully isn't just you making a simple choice. It turns out psychology has a name for it: identification with the aggressor. And what's really fascinating about psychoanalyst Anna Freud's definition here is that one little word, unconsciously. That tells us it's not just about being a coward. It's something deeper, an automatic coping mechanism that kicks in to help us manage a fear that feels totally overwhelming. And this idea, it shows up in a lot of different ways. The source points to a few related concepts just to show the range. You've got the sycophant who's always trying to please the aggressor, you've got the lackey who gets crushed under the weight of it all, and you can see this dynamic in something like Stockholm Syndrome. They're all just different flavors of the exact same thing. You align yourself with a powerful, scary figure as a way to survive.
Okay, so with that whole psychological framework laid out, the source material then takes this theory and applies it to a very specific modern political example. And I want to be super clear here. What's coming next is the source's own analysis. We're just breaking it down to explain their argument.
So the source sets it up like this. It labels Donald Trump and the MAGA movement as the aggressor in this particular dynamic. It then argues that many people inside the Republican Party use that identification mechanism we just talked about, essentially aligning with the aggressor out of fear. The text does make a point, though, to name a few people like Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and Thomas Massie as being exceptions to this.
But the analysis doesn't just stop with one person. According to the source, this whole phenomenon isn't really about a single individual. In their view, he's just the tip of the iceberg. The bigger point the source is trying to make is about the entire system of support around him, all the people who aided and abetted this dynamic.
So, to build its case, the analysis pulls out a series of direct quotes. It starts with this one: "I alone can fix it." The source presents this as a perfect example of that kind of centralizing, power-focused rhetoric that can create the very fear dynamic we've been talking about.
And here's another key example that the text brings up. The source uses this statement as part of what it sees as a pattern of claims that other people feel pressure to either repeat or at the very least not to challenge, all for the fear of being targeted themselves.
The source then gives us several more examples, from big foreign policy claims to statements about the economy. The goal here isn't to get into the weeds on each specific claim, but to show what the analysis presents as a pattern of statements that create a really high-pressure environment of conformity.
So all of this, the theory, the political example, it all builds toward a much larger set of questions that the source actually turns back on all of us. After laying everything out, it asks us to do a little self-reflection. Have you ever been in that schoolyard? Have you ever chosen to stay silent? Or maybe even join the mob, just to protect yourself?
And then the source zooms the lens out a bit and asks us to just look around at our own lives. Where have you seen this play out? Maybe in a meeting at work, during a family argument, or in your community. It really pushes us to see this not as some abstract theory, but as a real, reoccurring pattern in how people behave.
So here's the bottom line. We've gone on a bit of a journey here, right? We started with a really simple, relatable image of a schoolyard bully. Then we moved to a formal psychological definition, and we walked through a specific and controversial political example that the source uses. And it was all to illustrate this single, powerful tendency in human nature.
And that journey leaves us with this final, really provocative question from the source. It's a question about what happens when everyone knows what's really going on, when there's this collective silence, when a whole group of people publicly agrees to something that, in private, they all know isn't true. What do you do then? The source just leaves that question hanging there for all of us to think about.